Baldinger. I think it's a great time to reflect back on the season that Carson had, and Brian Baldinger got a chance to really sit down with Wentz and, even see how he's doing. I mean, we've seen video of him throwing the ball around. Will he be ready for the opener?
Adrian Peterson came back in 7 months, but did he come back too soon?
Oh, he had a great year that year when he came back. Mm-hmm. All right, let's bring Baldy into the conversation. Brian Baldinger, NFL Network. Follow him at Baldy NFL for his Baldy breakdowns of the offseason. And he joins us now on the Sports Bashers Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Baldy, welcome back, pal. How you been?
I've been good. Been real good, man. Been busy and, a lot going on here. We're kind of getting ready to launch a new show here at NFL Film, so we've been working on that and, getting ready for the draft and finish free agency. So it's been a busy time of the year.
Yeah, I know Monday, I guess you guys are scheduled to sit down with Doug Pederson and really reflect back on what a year he had. Just pushed all the right buttons, it seemed like.
Well, he was aggressive. He's been aggressive for 2 years, but obviously it was a magical year and they broke through. So there's a lot to cover. But Doug's really into it. He wants to sit down like he would with his staff and a coach, in a film room and be comfortable and kind of talk through some of the concepts and some of the plays and some of the things we saw. I mean, trying to get 2 quarterbacks ready, one for an MVP run during the regular season, and of course, trying to rebuild, Nick Foles for the postseason and what they did. So we really want to kind of get into some of it, and obviously the evolution of the RPO and things that people are talking about. But I'm pulling plays right now, getting ready for Monday. So we feel like we've got a lot to talk about. We can't wait to kind of sit down with Doug and let him take us through a lot of these concepts.
Yeah, and I guess one of the big adjustments for him was to go from Wentz to Foles. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. Did you see something that they did? I mean, because initially they said they weren't going to change. They were going to run the same offense. But did they stay true to their word?
They did. I mean, it wasn't they didn't put new plays in. But I would say there was a lot more kind of pre-snap scheming of where the ball is going to go. I mean, Doug and Frank and, John DiFilippo and, everybody over there on that staff, Jeff Stoutland, Mike Rowe, I think the whole group, Deuce Staley, I think the whole group kind of really said, okay, let's give them as many first reads as we possibly can, whether it's off a wheel route or a quick screen or an RPO, throw to Zach Ertz or, I just think as many first reads to take a lot of the, hold the ball a long time or trying to figure out what the defense is doing or rotating to. I think they eliminated a lot of that. And so while the offense didn't change, I think a lot of where the ball was supposed to go in his first read kind of changed a little bit with Nick, and it really suited him well. We've never seen a quarterback in a postseason put up third down completion percentage or yards per attempt or quarterback rating or anything quite like what Nick did.
Baldy, how about the progression of how that took place, though? Because when Nick first stepped in the Rams game, didn't miss a beat, and then in the next game against the Giants, looked solid. And, of course, the 2 games after that, as it started to settle in, that's when the fan base was like, oh, my God, can this guy do it? Is he the right guy for the job? Is that where the coaching staff had to sort of reconsider how do we tailor things to Nick and not try to just continue to stick to that same playbook we had for Carson Wentz?
Well, obviously, the night on Christmas evening against the Raiders wasn't good. That first quarter against the Cowboys in Week 17, there were some struggles there. So, Nick even so much said publicly that, the confidence starts with him. It's hard to have other people, whether it's own teammates, coaches, the fans have confidence in him if he doesn't play with confidence. So I think, Doug and the staff kind of recognized that. And they had the bye week, which was really important, where they really got some really good practice time in, and they really got comfortable with a lot of the things that Nick likes. And, when you watch and you listen to Doug during these games on, whether it's Carson's wired or Doug's wired or whatever, and you listen to him, there's a great interaction between Doug, his staff, and the quarterback. And there's all kinds of interplay between quarterbacks making suggestions, Doug suggesting things. I mean, there's a great deal of input from a lot of other people, and I think that's kind of what separates Doug from a lot of these other coaches is he really welcomes the input. You can hear it, and you can see it. And, all the way from, Nick suggesting the Philly special on fourth down, right at the end of the first half. I mean, that was Nick's call and his suggestion. Kind of blew off some of the things that Doug was thinking about at that spot. So I think it's a real credit to Doug how much he listens and the input he gets from other guys.
Was there a part of you that thought Nick would be moving on?
Well, I thought that as opposed to the other quarterbacks that moved, there was going to be a need for compensation with Nick. So I didn't know what teams were interested in offering. I didn't think any team would offer a first-round pick. I didn't think any team at the top of the draft, considering there's 4 or 5 that are going to go in the first 15 picks, I didn't think anybody would give up their second-round pick, in order to take Nick Foles right now. So I thought Nick was going to stay all along, but I also thought the Eagles would listen. I think they really like Nate Sudfeld a great deal. They spent a good deal of the time this year developing him. I know they like him and they feel confident with him. And if somebody wanted to really go big with an offer for Nick, I think they would have let him go. But if they weren't, I think, considering that what Carson's got to do here this offseason and get ready for next year, that they better have a good second guy in place. And so evidently nobody made a big enough offer for the Eagles to unload Nick, and I didn't think a team would.
So on average, about 10% of the athletes, Baldy, that meet the return-to-play criteria after an ACL re-injure that surgical leg. Is that something where the Eagles then, because they have Nick Foles, they should take it slower than normal? I mean, I know what they're publicly saying, but do you think that that's their comfort zone, their buffer zone, and internally they're having discussions like, let's maybe pump the brakes a little bit?
Well, I don't think they're making any decisions at all, here at the end of March. I mean, there's still a long time to go, but 4 months before training camp. So just being around Nick, I mean, he's walking fine. There's a little bit of a gimp, but, I mean, he looks pretty healthy right now. Just being with him, for a long part on Wednesday. But I don't think they're going to push it by any stretch. But I think if he's cleared and Carson feels good, I think they're going to put him out there. But I don't think you'll probably see him much in preseason, just limited, unless, he's really far along and, he really feels good about where he's at. I mean, every player is a little bit different about their confidence level, and I'm sure that they'll take all the precautions necessary. There won't be any rush. And I'm sure the doctors will make sure that it's fully 100%, and Carson feels like it's 100% before they put him out there.
We're talking with Brian Baldinger here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And, Baldy, you got a chance to sit down with Carson Wentz and take a look over his season. I mean, it's almost like a forgotten year because of what Nick did and the fact that they win the Super Bowl. But this kid was special, right? How did he make such a big jump from year 1 to year 2? What did he think about why he was able to have so much more success in his second year?
Right. Well, they worked. He talked about it on Wednesday. They worked a great deal, almost ad nauseum on a couple things. One is footwork. He didn't think a lot needed to be cleaned up, but he did recognize, especially under the tutelage of John DeFilippo, that there was some mechanics that needed to be fixed footwork-wise. And so he really spent time on that. He spent a lot of time on ball security, in the pocket, out of the pocket, 2 hands on the ball, throwing it to the right spot. And then they worked a great deal of time, a long time, on just the whole scramble drill. And when he extends a play, who's coming at him, who's going deep. And, that paid off fruition the third play of the season on a 58-yard bomb to Nelson Aguilar. So I think those 3 things they spent a lot of time on the offseason on. And, he feels pretty good about how that all paid off, all the work, all the time, all the effort, all the attention to detail. And that's really where the offseason was last year, just increasing amount of time on details of the game. And, I think that's the part that there's no way to know just how many details there are that go into every single play, every single game as a rookie. But when you step back after your rookie season and you start 16 games and,
right.
Then you can really start working on that. And that's what we spent the offseason on.
Yeah, and, I know you guys highlighted the play in Washington that really started up the year. I mean, that one, he's scrambling around, he finds Nelson Aguilar. Those type of plays, it's a lot of intuition, and when you have that kind of intuition, that seemingly was what makes you a special player.
Well, he's got special gifts, and he is an incredible athlete. All that big, strong stuff, I mean, that's all real. But, he just thought, look, he recognizes that, he's got this gift in this athletic ability. Let's use it to his advantage. And so even on that play, I mean, he waited and waited and waited and, darted, and out juked 3 or 4 different Redskin defensive linemen before he set his feet, and Aguilar went deep, and, he was able to find him. But he said those plays just don't happen. Those plays happen because you really rehearse them and practice them. And, that's why that play worked. And so they worked a lot during the whole season, on plays that looked like they were broken down. The thing is that he was a great running back growing up, he said, and he's a natural ball carrier, but he doesn't tuck the ball away to run until the last possible second. When he thinks things are completely broken down, he sees the alley, he wants to extend that play to throw it for as long as he can.
Baldy, you mentioned footwork and John DeFilippo. John DeFilippo gone now. Does that mean we'll get a different Carson? He's losing his security blanket?
Well, I think he feels pretty good about Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe was really responsible for, I think, the wide receiver room, the development of Aguilar, watching Matt Collins come along. And I think he's going to help. And I think, they've got a new quarterback coach that will spend a lot of time with Carson. One thing about Carson is he's very coachable. And, he really listens. And so I'm sure they'll have some new suggestions. And, he's not going to get a great deal of time to really work on a lot of this stuff this offseason, because he's going to spend most of his time in rehab. So, I think he'll do as much mental reps as he can. I'm sure there'll be some tinkering, because I don't think Carson feels like he's a finished product by any means. I think he feels like there's a great deal of growth in his game yet to be done.
Brian Baldinger's with us here. One thing with Carson Wentz, too, is he's not a small man. I'm looking at pictures of you guys standing next to each other. You're not a small man by any stretch, Baldy. He kind of towers over you. That's a big man to be as athletic that he is. I don't know that we appreciate that much, how athletic he is for the size that he is.
Well, everybody has to defend him. They're trying to figure it out. I just had Steve Spagnuolo in my room here just an hour ago, and we were looking at some things. And, he has had to defend him, 3 or 4 times now over the last 2 years. And, he's an elite athlete, but he's not just an elite athlete. You see him take a hit, he bounces right back up. And he's got elite arm strength, and he can really drive a ball. He's very, very strong. All the way around, and he is. He's every bit an inch and a half, maybe even 2 inches taller than me. He's probably closer to 6'6" than he is 6'5". But he's got fast twitch muscles. He is an explosive athlete. He can, really get to top speed in just a couple of steps. And so I think teams that had to chase him around the field this year, I think they recognize just how athletic he is.
Hey, did he indicate at all that, I know he has said, but that he thinks he might have to tone it down a little bit, or is this going to be the same Carson Wentz we see moving forward even after the injury?
Well, I think he recognized it even after the first year that, that he didn't slide at North Dakota State, but he just thought he was a better athlete than everybody, and he could either outrun him or run him over. And he did. He recognized, he started sliding quite a bit, the first 2 years. Said he played a lot of baseball. Sliding is a natural thing for him. But he, I pointed out a couple plays the other day, just going, maybe Carson, you don't have to gain every single blade of grass. And he kind of laughed, and he agrees. There's a time to sort of end the play or get out of bounds, and I think he'll be a little bit more cognizant of it. But there is an incredible fire that burns in that guy, and an incredible just competitive instinct and killer instinct to him. And so I think, it's going to be a battle that, Doug and this coaching staff is going to have with Carson. But he's also smart enough to know that missing the postseason this year was gut-wrenching to him. So I think he'll probably take some more measures this year to protect himself a little bit more.
So, Baldy, before we get to some of the questions about the Eagles' off-season moves, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about this new show that you and Jaws are doing at NFL Films? I've been seeing all your tweets and your Facebook posts. It looks really exciting, and not the least of which, you got to hang out with Carson Wentz. People would love to do that.
Yeah, no, I know. It's really it's kind of a dream show. I've been in TV for 23 years. I've done all the shows and announced all the games and stuff. But I just and to Jaws too, the same thing. Over a longer period, over 30 years for Jaws. But we feel like this is the best thing we've ever done. We literally take these coaches and players into a film room with players. In some cases, we have wires on these players that were wired during Super Bowls or games, and we could kind of address some of the things they've said on the sideline. So we get that luxury from NFL Films. We use the all-22 coaching footage, and we just put the clicker in the players' hands and let them talk through these plays, what they saw, the coverage, the anticipation. With Joe Thomas the other day just talking nonstop technique at left tackle, why he was able to play 10,363 straight snaps in a row in this league. And so, that's what we really want to do. We want to get these guys comfortable in their comfort zone and in their, where they spend a lot of their time reviewing plays and different defenses and schemes and how do you attack them. And we want to hear it from them, explaining the game. We just feel like there's a big void in the analysis department between what is given to fans on television and on some of the talk shows and what they really want. And we're going to allow the players and coaches to teach the game and give, I think, fans a great deal more insight to what's going on in these games.
And you got Carson Wentz, you got Pederson coming up, so some local flavor. Brian Baldinger's with us. I'd like to get your take on, now that the dust has settled a little bit here, this defense that was really the calling card last year. And then, in the Super Bowl, Graham makes the huge play, but they add Nata, they add Michael Bennett, we hope anyway. Do you think the defense has gotten better this offseason? They did lose, Vinnie Curry and Bo Allen and Patrick Robinson. So what's the trade-off on the guys they lost and the guys they've added?
Well, I mean, everybody realizes you can't bring back the same team, nor should you bring back the same team. Every team needs to be reshuffled. There was a lot of important things they did. They kept Nigel Bradham. It's hard to find Mike linebackers. He had an outstanding season, really outstanding season. He's a guy that Jim Schwartz really trusts to be able to change plays, get guys lined up correctly. So it was important to get him re-signed. They're hard to find out there in free agency or the draft. And then I just think they've made upgrades. I think Haloti Ngata is an upgrade on Bo Allen. He's really happy to be here. He's amongst a lot of Polynesians on that team right now. I think he's got a great deal of football left in him. He didn't play a lot of the season last year, went out with a torn tricep. So he's back. I think he'll be a really good addition. And I think Michael Bennett's an elite player. I think it's an upgrade over Vinnie Curry, as good as Vinnie played last year. Michael Bennett played over 900 snaps last year. He may only have to play, 600 or 700 this year in a defense that will continue to rotate. So the addition of Darryl Worley just adds a lot of competition at corner. They loved him coming out of West Virginia. They love Dana Holgerson's players from West Virginia, so they were excited about getting a guy that has started 31 games for Carolina. And I think he's got a big upside to him. So I think the team is in good shape here, especially defensively right now.
Baldy, you can't say enough about West Virginia to Mike Gill. He just keeps nodding along.
This whole room is all WVU alum.
Except for me.
Yeah.
They make great football players and great broadcasters.
That's what we hear. How about the offensive side of things, Brian Baldinger? They lose Blunt, they lose Burton, but they're adding Wallace. What about the offensive side of the football?
Well, it looks like they're going to get Jason Peters back, and so you're talking about an elite player. So the offensive line is going to come back intact and maybe get their left tackle back. Look, they still have Jay Ajayi here. They have a lot of other, Corey Clement's going to play a bigger role. I think the one player that is going to be a much bigger loss than anybody realizes, and Carson was talking about it the other day, is Trey Burton. When Zach Ertz was out this year in a couple of games, Trey Burton stepped up against the Rams when Ertz was out. He had 2 touchdown catches in that day. And he just said that, he's every bit as good a route runner as Zach Ertz is. And although he only had, 24, 28 catches last year, 5 of them were for touchdowns. And really Carson thinks that he's going to be a real star in Chicago. So they're going to have to replace, obviously, Selleck and Trey Burton. So that looks to be the one hole right now in this offense.
Baldy, draft time, 32nd pick. It's really hard to pin down a guy, but an area you think that this team needs to start looking at? Whether it be depth or there's a specific need that you think this team's looking at for the draft?
I don't think there's a specific need, but I think if Orlando Brown is there at 32, I think they'd run the card up there and scoop him up right away. I think they really covet Orlando. They coach his father. Joe Douglas and Andy Waddle coach his father in Baltimore. They know the kid since he was probably 12 years old, 10 years old. So they don't really care much about what he did in Indianapolis at the Combine. They know what kind of man and player he is. I think that'd be one position that they would immediately scoop up if he was available at 32.
By the way, for listeners, he's a tackle, so looking a little offensive line spot there. And how about the tight end spot? They lose Burton, they lose Selleck too. Really, Ertz seemingly is the only guy they got, that's played in the league. Do you think, a lot of people talk about the Gesicki kid from Penn State. I mean, he's not a blocker though, but would you be intrigued if he was there at 32?
Yeah, I'd be. I don't know how they have him slotted right now. I think they're going to draft a tight end for sure. They have used offensive tackles, Isaac Seumalo, Big V, as blocking tight ends in certain looks in the past. So how well the tight end blocks might not be as critical, although Brent Selleck was really, really good at that position. So I think they would like to get a true Y, a guy that can really block. I mean, it's not – Zach Ertz got better. I'm not here to demean Zach Ertz, but he is an elite receiver in a slot position, elite pass route runner and pass catcher. So they don't really lean on him to block as much. But they're looking to add two tight ends to this roster, whether it's through further down the road free agency or through the draft.
Brian Baldinger at Baldy NFL. Use the hashtag Baldy Breakdowns for all his great coverage of the offseason. They'll be sitting down with Coach Doug Pederson on Monday, so you'll be able to follow that on his Twitter, Baldy NFL, and all the great stuff they're doing at the NFL Films here on the Sports Bash Live on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Baldy, thanks so much, pal. We'll catch up soon.
Okay, my pleasure. Anytime, guys. I'll talk to you.